Okay, Tov. So having seen the basic principles of Davar HaMoed over the last few days, let's now try to apply this into some practical examples and applications of this in day-to-day life. So let's start with the basics, with shops which are selling food at least. That's the most straightforward. Any supermarket, Jewish supermarket, grocery, meat, fish, any kind of such shops which have got to do with food. We've already learned many times in the past that all melachot, even melechet uman, is permissible for food on Chol HaMoed. And therefore, it's absolutely fine for the shops to remain open and to sell, and in fact, they should do so. In the past, the Gemara and the Shulchan does talk about making some kind of difference and not selling so openly, but nowadays, where food is so common and people buy food every day, all the poskim are in agreement that shops can remain open as usual and to sell as usual all kinds of food for the moed. And of course, everything which is associated with this. So, for example, writing a receipt, either writing it out or printing it. Even if one would consider this to be melechet uman, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's all got to do with the food, and therefore it is all permissible. If you think about it, it should only be permissible, and this is correct, to sell to people who are going to be buying food for the moed. Say you are selling to someone who you know is buying food for after moed. Somehow you know. Or say, for example, a non-Jew. The whole Heter is to sell to Jewish people who are buying food for the moed, or for the second part of the Chag. But as we've learned, you can't do merchandise, you can't do business even with a non-Jew on Chol HaMoed. Nonetheless, it's certainly mutar. We don't have to interrogate and to start asking people what's the reason they're buying. Of course not. And even if a non-Jew, even if it's clearly and visibly a non-Jewish person who wants to buy, it's not going to be appropriate in play darkei shalom to sell only to Jewish people, not to Jewish people. Obviously, that wouldn't work, and that would be incorrect to do nowadays. And therefore, it's a blanket heter that shops can remain open and sell to people. If, however, you are living and you own a food shop and you're living in a place where it's all non-Jews, so you're operating whatever it is food, but only for non-Jews, or very, very a minority of Jews come in. It's very rare. It's generally speaking, it's for non-Jewish people, and that wouldn't be allowed to remain open on Chol HaMoed, because the whole heter is to sell to people who, for the purposes of the moed. But if you have a shop, a food shop, which is operating in another part of the country, which is no Jews there, then that wouldn't be allowed unless circumstances which we'll discuss tomorrow, when other kinds of shops are allowed to remain open. But that's important to recognize. Food shops are only allowed if they're selling food to Jewish people, or predominantly Jewish people, for the moed. Other shops, which are clearly not food, are not allowed to open. However, if it's in a place, now we have learned that there are situations where a person is allowed to buy stuff from the moed. Certain circumstances, you may need to buy a new dress, you might need to buy a new washing machine or something like that. In such cases, we have learned in the past, there are circumstances where that would be permissible. So generally, that wouldn't be allowed to keep your shop open because of the possibility that someone may need. If someone needs, then they can ask the person to open the shop and to go in and to check. But nowadays, when we live in at least in big cities, in small villages where there's one shop, or small moshav where there's one shop for clothes, and everyone knows each other. So there, you don't open the shop. And if someone needs a new dress, they can, or new suit, they can call the person and say, "Can you open the shop for me sometime today to come and see a new suit because I need one for the moed?" But in big cities, it's not practical. That doesn't happen. And so would be permissible to leave such shops open when it's clear that the business that they're doing is only for the purposes of people who need for the moed, and they should make that clear, because the default isn't like that. They should make it clear, maybe put up a sign or something to say this shop is open now on the moed for the purposes of people who need to buy things for the moed. But the default position would be, if you're not selling groceries and food, then one wouldn't, to Jewish people, one wouldn't be allowed to, in normal circumstances, keep their shop open. We'll continue this tomorrow.